Nebuchadnezzar wants two things. It's the middle of the night. He's woken from his sleep. He's troubled by this dream, and he can't quite remember the dream, but something tells him it's important. And so he's trying to recall the dream, and when he can't do it, he calls in his wise men, the magicians, the astrologers, the Chaldeans, who are the PhDs of the Babylonian court. He calls them in. He says, "Fellas, I've had a dream, and there's something about the dream that tells me that it's important, but I can't remember the dream. I need you to tell me the dream and what it means." They had probably gone through this before, and they'd probably been woken up in the middle of the night before, and the king had some strange dream because he ate too much before he went to bed, and "I had this dream." And they'd say, "Oh, king, this is what it means." "Oh, okay, well, that's good." And they'd go back to sleep, and everything was fine. But tonight was different. He couldn't remember it. He couldn't remember the dream, and so he said, "I need to know the dream and the interpretation." They said, "Hey, listen, you tell us the dream, and we'll give you the interpretation." He said, "Listen, I don't have it. If you can't give me both the dream and its interpretation, it's going to be over for you."
And the decree went forth that the wise men should be slain, and they sought Daniel and his fellows to be slain.
This sets the stage for our story. Very heavy drama. The plot thickens. The king was not just whistling Dixie. He was deadly in earnest about understanding this dream. They couldn't give him the dream. They couldn't give him the interpretation. He says, "That's it. The job of the magician, the job of the sorcerer, the job of the astrologer, the job of the Chaldean was to be in touch with spirits and the netherworld so that they knew things that common people didn't know." And so the king would call on them in these kinds of difficult times, and he had the reasonable expectation that they would be able to deliver on what they said they could do. And the moment he realizes he has a bunch of phonies on the divine payroll, he basically says, "If you can't deliver the goods, it's over for you so-called wise men." And he sends out the decree in his frustration, "Destroy all the wise men of Babylon." Well, Daniel and his three companions, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, had gone through the schools of the Babylonians, and so they were numbered among the wise men. And a man by the name of Arioch, he was the captain of the king's guard. He showed up one evening and he begins to knock on Daniel's door. I wonder what that conversation was like as Daniel opens the door in the middle of the night and says, yeah, Arioch, what can I get for you?" "Daniel, I'm here to kill you." "Whoa, really? Why? Why are you here to kill me?" And he made the thing known to Daniel. He said, "Well, the king has had a dream and he wants to know the dream and the interpretation. Nobody can tell it to him." Pick it up with me in verse 14.
Then Daniel answered with counsel and wisdom to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, which was gone forth to slay the wise men of Babylon. He answered and said to Arioch, the king's captain, "Why is the decree so hasty from the king?" Then Arioch made the thing known to Daniel. Then Daniel went in and desired of the king that he would give him time and that he would show the king the interpretation.
Now think about that for just a moment. Daniel goes in before the king. Quick question for you. Does Daniel know the dream at this point? Does Daniel know the interpretation at this point? But Daniel knows the one who knows the dream. He goes in before the king. Do you think that took faith, yes or no? What he basically said is, "King, I don't have it now, but I know who does have it, and if you'll give me," what, everyone? "Time, I can deliver the goods." Well, then Daniel did the same thing that you would do.
Then Daniel went to his house and made the thing known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, that they would desire mercies of the God of heaven concerning the secret, that Daniel and his fellows should not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon.
In other words, they went and prayed about it. Isn't that what you'd do? I mean, if your neck was on the line and you knew you had to come up with the goods, you would pray about it. You know, the proverbial airplane that takes off of the tarmac there and it's filled with 300 sinners. And they get up about 40,000 feet up into the air and they begin to encounter some turbulence, and all of a sudden you got 300 saints on board. "Oh, Lord, if you just get me off of this plane, I'll live my life for you. I'm so..." Oh, and the captain gets the thing under control and it lands safely and 300 sinners walk off. You know how it is. When the going gets tough, when tough times come, we know what's most important in life, don't we? Yes or no? Now, look at verse 19.
Then was the secret revealed unto Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven.
Wouldn't you? I mean, Daniel's praying, Hananiah's praying, Azariah's praying, Mishael is praying, "Oh God, our head's on the block," and all of these other phonies' heads are on the block, and we don't want only to lose our own lives, we want to preserve the lives of these people. So, "Oh God, give us the dream." and God came through right on time. Isn't that awesome? Are you with me? Yes or no? Notice what he says in verse 20. He has a little praise session there.
Daniel answered and said, Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. And he changeth the times and the seasons. He removeth kings and setteth up kings. He giveth wisdom unto the wise, and knowledge to them that know understanding. He revealeth the deep and secret things. He knoweth what is in the darkness, and the light dwelleth with him. I thank thee and praise thee, O thou God of my fathers, who hast given me wisdom and might, and hast made known unto me now what we desired of thee, for thou hast now made known unto us the king's matter.
Now, this is where the plot really thickens. This is where the drama intensifies. We pick it up in verse 24.
Therefore Daniel went in unto Arioch, whom the king had ordained to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus unto him, Destroy not the wise men of Babylon. Bring me in before the king, and I will show unto the king the interpretation.
What a tremendous act of faith. He says, take me before the king. I'm going to tell him what he's looking for, verse 25.
Then Arioch brought in Daniel before the king in haste, and said thus unto him, I have found a man of the captives of Judah that will make known unto the king the interpretation. The king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, art thou able to make known unto me the dream which I have seen, and the interpretation thereof?
Now, I want you to think about this scene here for just a moment. Daniel is basically a Hebrew slave. For all practical purposes, he's a Hebrew bondservant. His country, his nation had been utterly destroyed and subjugated by the Babylonians. And here he is, probably a 19 or a 20 or a 21-year-old boy, standing before the most powerful man in the world. And the most powerful man in the world is intensely interested in what Daniel has to say. Never forget this lesson. If you have knelt before God, you can stand before kings. If you have knelt before God with humility, you can stand before kings with confidence. And the king looks at Daniel and says, can you give me the dream? And this would have been a perfect opportunity for Daniel to say, oh yeah, king, I'm the man. I got the goods. I can tell you what it is because I'm so smart. But I want you to notice what Daniel does.
Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, The secret which the king hath demanded cannot the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, the soothsayers show unto the king. But there is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets, and maketh known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days.
Daniel takes no credit whatsoever for himself. He says, it's not about me, king, it's about God. And God has shown you this dream so you can know what happens in the latter days.
Thy dream and the visions of thy head upon thy bed are these. As for thee, O king, thy thoughts came into thy mind upon thy bed, what should come to pass hereafter. And he that revealeth secrets maketh known to thee what shall come to pass. But as for me, this secret is not revealed to me for any wisdom that I have more than any living, but for their sakes that shall make known the interpretation to the king, and that thou mightest know the thoughts of thy heart. Thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. This image's head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay. Thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, and brake them to pieces. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors, and the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain, and filled the whole earth. This is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king.